So my son got married this weekend.
Congratulations.
Wow. Congratulations. Yeah.
That is that's a strange experience. I mean, Bill, you just got married like what, 3 weeks ago or something? It was recently.
2 years, two-year anniversary in December.
2-year anniversary, yeah. And it's kind of cool when my friend gets married, and that was an exciting thing. But it's a really unusual experience when you sit there in that front row and you see your boy up there receiving his bride. And
are you trying to say that you were more emotionally moved by your son's wedding than my wedding? Think about it. Think carefully.
Technically, no, because I felt nothing at your wedding. I was dead to the world. There was nothing there. But I'll tell you what, the part that really got me choked up, and this is kind of strange because it really doesn't involve, it's not my son. They do this thing where they turn around, and they had decided that they would have the doors closed, and then they would open the doors, and there would be the reveal, and the bride would
the big
appear
reveal,
there. And when they opened the doors, I did one of those kind of,
really?
It's like I immediately got choked up, and I'm like, she's just some kid that my son's marrying, But she was, of course, beautiful, and she's a wonderful woman and everything. But I would guess that some of our viewers are of a certain age and are going through this time themselves. And it does make you kind of reconsider life. I have not yet signed up to be a socialist as a result of this, but it could happen. Everything's in play now. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, our backstage meeting of Right Angle. And I've gone soft on y'all. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. And there's no reason at all, by the way, guys, that I brought that topic up other than
it's a great topic.
Fish for some compliments and sympathy.
Well, yes, of course. But there's also that kind of insincere empathy with the audience that I'm seeking.
That's right. That's the main thing. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you. So this week I actually have the honor of hosting the members only episode, and I have a topic, believe it or not. It was touch and go for a while there, and as usual, you guys can tell me if you think that I should do this for members rather than the general public one. But this is the general public one that I'm going to suggest. Fox News did a tax day town hall. I don't know why they call it tax day, because it's like the final deadline when you're supposed to submit your forms, and it's not even really that, because you can submit an extension.
Yeah, they give you 4.5 months.
As long as you submit, that's the main thing.
The key thing to remember in a constitutional republic is every day is tax day. So don't think it's just for April 15th. But in any case, Brett Baer, who was the host, one of the hosts of this event, asked the audience how many people were covered under an employer-provided healthcare plan or employer-sponsored healthcare plan, and it seemed like a good more than half of them probably raised their hands, and they had this wide shot. And then they said, how many of you would like this single-payer Medicare for all plan that Senator Bernie Sanders, is proposing? And not only did it appear that most of those same hands went back up again, but a cheer went up from the audience in the Fox News studios. And a lot of people were kind of critical on the left of Bernie agreeing to do that, because the Democrats have said that they would not do any of their primary debates on Fox News because of their bias.
Because it'd be fairly treated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brett Baer seems to be one of the good guys. We can't have that.
Props to Bernie for going on Fox News. Yeah. But I thought this was interesting, guys, as a topic. There was a poll in The Hill a while back, within the last couple of months, that basically said a majority of Republicans support single payer. There's something like 56% of all Americans are supportive of this kind of idea. And we talked, when Obamacare was being proposed, about how the risk is if you get that in there, even for a short time, it's going to become the new normal. Yep. And people will come to expect that the federal government has an outsized role in healthcare. What do you do with this?
These ideas always poll well until people find out what they're going to have to actually pay for them. P.J. O'Rourke wrote,
it's too late.
Yeah, P.J. O'Rourke wrote, I think 25 years ago, if you think healthcare is expensive now, wait until it's free.
Well, and it's funny because Bernie came right out and said it's not free. And yes, it's going to be expensive to do this. So,
look, when you get down to brass tack, obviously I think it's a gigantic mistake, and I think it's a shameful example of how badly we are getting the message out there and so on. So I'm not trying to sound like I'm supporting this in any way, but when you get down to the brass tacks of it, on some level, I don't much care so long as private health insurance is still available. To me, that's the root of the nightmare, is having the state control your destiny and having the state decide that you are no longer worth the money, and having nowhere else to go. Not only nowhere else to go, but being prevented from having somebody to come in and rescue you like they do with the NHS in Britain.
Yeah.
Well, then you'll be glad to hear this, Bill, because the Hill quotes, this is an actual sentence from the Hill story about this. His proposed bill, meaning Sanders, Senator Sanders' proposed bill, would largely eliminate private insurance and institute a single-payer system managed by the government.
Not only that, but Oh, sorry.
It eliminates it through market competition. First thing it does is put the private companies out of business, and once they're out of business, how can a private company compete with taxpayer-funded healthcare, which is so-called free to half the population or more?
Yeah, one of the things in the bill, I can't remember exactly how this is structured, but doctors who saw patients outside of Medicare for all, Medicaid for all, whatever the hell it is we're calling socialized medicine, would either be not allowed to do it at all or face stiff extra payments for treating people outside of government's tender mercies.
Now you're down to the brass tacks of why they like the plan.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I understand why Bernie likes the plan. Why do the people in the audience in the Fox News studio like the plan?
Well, I was going to say because they're lazy, but because the current system is so messed up. It's so messed up. It's so expensive. It's such a bizarre combination of co-pays and insurance deductibles and tax deductions and it's just a bloody mess. And one of the reasons it's so expensive is doctors have to charge 3 times what they used to because they got to pay one of those entire year's earnings to their lawyers and another year's earnings to the government. So if you just let these people alone, cost of healthcare would fall right down to where it was before we got our hands all over this stuff. And I don't know, man. I think we've talked about this before. You can't just say that this is bad. You've got to say that this is bad and here's what's better. And we haven't been doing that at all.
I just got done with my annual physical, and it's the one right before I turn 50. So it's a little more detailed than ever, and I'll be getting into maybe that this summer when I start doing the extra exams, which is going to be real fun.
Yeah, I'm not sure we want to hear all of that.
You really don't. But here's my doctor, who I love her to death. I've got a great physician. But every year when I go to see her for my physical, which thank goodness is the only time I've had to see her, she runs through this litany of questions. You can tell they're half memorized. She's not listening to your answers. And they include things like, do you have guns in your house? And if you do, are they in a safe or do they have trigger locks? And all of this rote nonsense
I'm out the door.
That's mandated by Obamacare. And so you've got a highly trained medical professional who has to waste a portion of every visit asking questions she doesn't want to ask to listen to answers that she doesn't care about. And
what happens if you say it's none of your damn business? They take that as the answer and they move on, right?
Yeah. Do you have a gun in the home?
Well, honey, I've got a gun in the back of my pants.
Yeah, I don't have. It's not in the home anymore because it's under my belt. Yeah, that's right. Not at the moment. At the moment, it's in a doctor's office.
So this is it. This is it. I mean, and maybe we're reading too much into it, and maybe some George Soros stuffed the Fox News studio with people pretending to be conservatives. And I haven't read that story yet, but I'm sure it's out there.
It's got to be.
That was my first thought, really. and it's probably just a reach, clutching at straws. But you never really know. If Bernie was going to be on the show and it was known that Bernie was going to be on the show, it's not inconceivable that they could have, flooded the zone.
Yeah, well, it was all about Bernie. It was a town hall with him. But it was like, I guess enough people. Here's what I think is part of it. We were so lathered up when they were trying to get this thing passed about the disastrous consequences of doing it. And then it got passed. And frankly, most people don't either pay attention that well or don't really notice any disastrous consequences. And so they're thinking, well, gee, really, is it all that bad? I mean, is having the government run your healthcare any different than sending your kids off to a government-run school for 6 or 8 hours a day?
No.
Maybe it's okay.
It's not any different. They're both catastrophic. And
but everybody does it. The vast majority of people still send their kids to a government-run, tax-funded school where they have no idea what their kids are being told for 6 hours a day.
That's why I'm such a big advocate of the home hospital movement.
That's right.
That's what I think the solution is.
We, in fact, if I could bring my son in, he's in the surgical theater right in the next bedroom. We're getting those windows installed so I can look down into it. I've always liked that part. Anyway, yet they're just such a small proportion of the people who are willing to do the work for themselves that they are glad to outsource it to the government. And here's another one of those cases where I'm just concerned that people are like, you know what? The private insurance system is a frickin' mess, and I don't want to think about it. Here, just let them.
That's exactly right. I don't want to deal with it. Just take my money.
Yeah. Okay, so that's my fun topic for the general public.
Thanks, man.
Which I'm sure I'll try to come up with some sort of way to clickbait the crap out of that.
Ooh, yeah, I can see the thumbnail now. It says, everything sucks and is going to get worse.
That's right. Thinking about slitting your wrist? Don't watch this video. Anyway. Okay, so then the members only episode actually has related to our buddy Mayor Pete. We did an episode last week, I think, on Bill Whittle Now about Mayor Pete Buttigieg, which is, by the way, as close as I can come to an accurate pronunciation of that name. And Mayor Pete was asked on CNN, he was actually talking about President Trump's nominee to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, one Stephen Moore, who had made the remark that if you had the choice between democracy and capitalism, you should take capitalism. And,
That's right.
And so Pete Buttigieg basically says that, in fact, it's the other way around. You should take democracy because the foundational ideas of rule of law and fairness, even though technically that's not really in there, but you should take democracy because in Buttigieg's words, capitalism, capitalism has let a lot of people down.
Oh, no.
Really?
Yeah. Mob rule has a long history of peace and prosperity, as opposed to capitalism, which has provided none of those things ever.
And lifted the entire planet out of poverty, essentially, most of it.
Yeah.
Certainly Asia.
And 50% of it in just the last 25 years.
I would suggest then that the people that capitalism has let down is the gravediggers in third world countries.
That's definitely showing a decline.
That idea you were talking about with currency, Bill, the velocity of currency in the marketplace, I think, of money in the marketplace. In this case, the velocity of holes to be dug
that's right.
Has slowed
That's right.
down.
That'll be the full employment plan. Is there'll be fewer people alive, and they'll all be employed as gravediggers. So you at least have the employment problem.
100 million holes and counting. It's it's the broken window fallacy, only with a body count.
Well, and it's not just like the murderous reign of socialism and communism, but just the fact what Bill's pointing out is nutrition and medicine and access to clean water and all of that kind of stuff that's been made possible so that things, even from when we were teenagers, the world is a phenomenally better place. An unbelievably better place.
Even in this country, I'm not sure I told you that, guys, this particular thing before, but I've been watching WKRP on my tablet at night, 'cause my wife got me the DVD set a couple of years ago, and I think it was going to take me longer to watch the shows than the show was actually on the air. But I was looking at Mr. Carlson with his 12-year-old son, thinking, man, Mr. Carlson, he's got to be, in his low 60s. He looks to be a little old to have a 12-year-old kid. And so I pulled up IMDb to find out what age, I've just forgotten the actor's name, Gordon Jump, what age Gordon Jump was when they were filming WKRP that first season. And he was 47 years old, the same age I was watching this show. And it's not like I've taken any great care of myself over my adult life. But a person today at 47 looks 20 years younger, 15 years younger at least, than a person in 1978 did at the exact same age. And that's just the change in this country. It's amazing.
So anyway, I'd like to just kind of have that discussion, and it's sort of a would you rather, democracy or capitalism. I know it's a false dichotomy, but I think it's an interesting question, and at least CNN and Stephen Moore and Pete Buttigieg thought it was. But I also think it is foundational, like the way you think about that question, not necessarily the conclusion that you draw, but the way you think about that question says a lot about what your philosophy is, what kind of country you envision as the United States of America being,
and how well educated you are. I mean, honest to God.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I'll save it for the show, but I mean, honestly.
Okay. Well, I could ask the people who are watching this show now just to avert their eyes while you speak.
Look, if you have a republic that protects every individual rights and enforces those protections of individual rights, enforces keeping the government inside its boundaries, you don't need a democracy. A democracy could just screw things up.
You think this is really just kind of loose talk and semantics as far as what democracy means? Because when Pete Buttigieg is saying democracy, I'll bet he means something different than Stephen Moore does.
Oh, I bet he does, yeah.
Democracy as a term has just been batted around so much by everybody. We're the world's oldest democracy. We're fighting for democracy and so on. But once you understand what a republic is, you realize why we're a republic and not a democracy. And if I had to pick one, look, freedom and equality are not only different, they are opposed to each other. The more equality you have, the less freedom. The more freedom you have, the less equality. And anytime you decide to come down on the side of voting for things, people voted themselves Adolf Hitler, they voted themselves Venezuela, they voted themselves, essentially in the beginning, they voted themselves the Soviets, they voted themselves all of this stuff.
I'll disagree with just to a degree, Bill. I think you need at least some democratic element because voters get frustrated with their jerk politicians and every few years need the opportunity to throw the bastards out and put in some fresh bastards.
I maintain you don't need the jerk politicians.
So do you think, was it, and I may be citing the wrong person here, but do you think that Woodrow Wilson was wrong when he said
Woodrow Wilson was wrong about everything?
That we are fighting to make the world safe for mob rule? I mean, democracy?
Of course he was wrong.
See,
and we were wrong.
And we were the arsenal of democracy and all of this stuff. And it's nice shorthand, but...
Yeah, shouldn't we just grant that? Shouldn't we grant that that's what they're really talking about? They're talking about the American system of government, even though they don't know the proper word. Like I had one of our members wrote a note. I don't think he's a member, but he was somebody who I was corresponding with about membership and what it means. And one of the things he said that he's bugged by is the fact that somebody on this network, so to speak, might refer to the mainstream media when it really should be the corporatist media or something like that. And I'm like, I think if we sat down and talked about it, we'd have the same complaints.
Nobody's going to go out and put on a campaign poster, make the world safe for constitutionally limited government with respect for individual rights with some democratic elements.
And federalism.
It doesn't play well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll dig into that in our little show this week. Steve, you got a mouthful of coffee or something? Why don't you go next?
Water, believe it or not. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. What a disappointment to people who've been following you for years.
And
looking toward your early demise.
Wow. That was pretty harsh.
Ow. So, I want to talk about the thing everybody hates and nobody knows how to get rid of, and that is the income tax. We had.
I thought you were going to say crabs. Okay, go ahead.
No, not sure why your brain went there.
Sorry,
of all possible places.
Just a childhood memory.
Okay. Go ahead. Cruising the news yesterday, of course, was tax day, April 15, although, as I think Bill noted before the camera started rolling, in a constitutional republic, every day is tax day, unfortunately.
That was Scott.
Oh, that was Scott. I'm sorry. I can't tell you two apart.
Who can tell the difference between the two of us anymore?
Yeah. It's just, slender read. The first column I ran across complaining about how awful the income tax was from a left-wing columnist at the New York Daily News saying, we've got two tax systems and it's totally unfair. And of course, his proposal was to make it even more unfair. And I'll get to that, I guess, in the segment. And there was a great column at Reason about a nice young lady, Liz Wolfe, who writes for the magazine, who said she and her husband had to get stoned in order to do their taxes. It was just that soul-crushing a process. And then over at the Federalist, the third column I ran across, listed 9 conservative complaints against the income tax. And the 3 that really struck me, because they're all really interrelated, is the code is too complicated. The code has one other thing that I forget was part of it, and that the tax code is too easily weaponized. And they're all part of the same things. It allows Congress to pick winners and losers and all that thing. So
are you saying that if I'm filling out my taxes and doing my Schedule C and for my consulting business, and I take a deduction for Terrapin Station, that's not going to be allowed? Are Grateful Dead albums deductible?
Well, I think it depends on their use. Actually, no, entertainment is no longer deductible. Meals are.
Oh, man.
So, yeah.
Did you see? I thought this was on Instapundit, Steve. Wasn't there this poll where they asked people how many people think that they got a tax cut this year? And it was like 60% of the people got a tax cut, or 62% of the people got a tax cut, but only 30% of the people thought they did.
Yeah.
And the only cohort that I saw where the expectation or the opinion matched the reality was actually people who make less than $30,000 a year. And about 30% of them thought they got a tax cut, and about 30% of them did.
Well, okay, if you're not making much money, you're going to pay attention to every dollar, right? And so it would make sense that, if you're raking in the big bucks, you're not going to notice a $3,000 tax hit or a $3,000 bit of tax relief. But if that's 10% of your income, you're darn right you're going to notice that.
So this is bad news for the government. Maybe we'll finally get the politicians off their buttocks to deal with this, because if you give somebody a tax cut and they don't know they got it, you might have a complicated tax code.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And so I want to talk about why we have this thing everybody hates and no one has any serious proposals to deal with other than the fair tax people, who we'll talk about them too.
Wow. All righty. That sounds like fun.
And Scott, I want to talk to you about the constitutional aspects of it.
Oh, hang on a second. I have a copy of that around here somewhere.
Yeah, and Bill,
actually, see that black box right there above my finger?
Yeah.
Which is probably off screen now, so it's like over there.
Yeah, I can see it.
Anyway, that is the compiled debates on the Constitution at the Federal Convention of 1787. That's a 2-volume set of debates on the Constitution.
Well,
so I'll refer to that.
Did you take those notes yourself?
It was James Madison stepped out to urinate occasionally, and then I picked it up. I picked up the quill.
Very nice.
And filled it in, yeah.
So, Scott, I'm going to give you the constitutional angle, because I think the 16th Amendment is just an absolute disaster of an amendment. And Bill, I'm going to play to your strength and give you the nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure angle.
Love it.
By the way, James Madison, in fact, took all those notes during the Constitutional Convention without anybody asking him to or being assigned to do such a thing. He just decided that he would sit up at the front of the room where he could see everybody and that he would take notes. And he took these exhaustive notes, and then he'd go home and rework them and, make sure he remembered things correctly and do second drafts of them and stuff like that. And I swear he probably had a spittoon next to him so that he never had to leave the table. I mean,
I hope it was just a spittoon.
It was exhaustive coverage.
Wow. Okay.
So, that is impressive.
That's a nice segue for whatever you have to say.
I was gonna do this story about Matt Iglesias bragging about how well the media has misinformed Americans that they got a tax cut and that nobody realized that they got a tax cut.
Well, you can do that.
But the only reason I picked that story was because I was pretty sure the other three were going to be about Notre Dame. So I guess I'll do the cathedral.
Could do Notre Dame.
I think that's a great topic.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by why it even matters. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is I'm fascinated by how significant that event is to so many people. It's like a really, really old building had massive fire damage, and millions of people around the world care.
And we've had a couple of billionaires now pledge 300 million euros. This is just two billionaires. Wow. One is Selma Hayek's husband, whose name I can't remember, and another guy whose name I also can't remember. But
well, it's important.
Private donations are flowing in.
But isn't that a fascinating thing about the human condition? Like, after your building lasts for a certain period of time, like, it's people who don't even care about Catholicism, they don't care about Jesus, they don't care about God, but they care about that building. Have
you seen it?
Oh, it's magnificent. Yeah.
It's one of the wonders of the world. And it's an indication of how deeply people believed in the religious system that basically forms everything that we believe in today. I mean, so much of the Enlightenment came out of France prior to the American Revolution. We finally showed those cheese-eating surrender monkeys how to do it.
How to do it right, yeah.
But it is Western culture, yep. and it's burning. And you're not going to find a more apt metaphor for what's going on in Europe than the fact that the flammable parts of the cathedral burned down, but the stone remains. And the question now is, will the foundational bones of Western civilization be able to survive this catastrophe of multiculturalism, or is it simply just a matter of time before they just hoist a crescent over the cathedral? And I'm not joking either, because this is a stated goal of Islam, is to, when a territory is conquered, they turn whatever the largest and most impressive religious structure that existed prior to into a mosque. Yeah. St. Sophia's in Istanbul and in is that the Dome of the Rock, I guess, in Jerusalem. Yeah, it's a landmark. It's a thing. So the question is, are they going to actually rebuild it? I mean, I know it's a big money tourist thing, so I suspect just that alone. But I think my take on it is, it really is true. You don't know what you have until it's gone. Yeah. And I think the idea of Paris without Notre Dame Cathedral shocked a lot of people who were perfectly willing to have Paris without a Catholic church.
Sure. Yeah. Because last I heard, the figures were something like the professing Christianity in, and this, I don't know if this is evangelical or just all Christianity in France, but it was down to like 6%. I mean, it was like an incredibly low percentage. I have a prediction, by the way. I understand it took some 200 years to build Notre Dame.
77 years.
77 years. Okay, so it took a really long time. So it took 77 years to build it with modern technology that we have today, and just the incredible ability to bring to bear logistics and resources from all around the world, computer technology, cheap foreign labor. All those guys who were rioting in some sections of Paris will now have something to do. My prediction is, instead of 77 years, they will cut that down to roughly 350 years.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right. We have the technology to do it very, very quickly, but not the fiscal discipline or the political will to go in there and do it. And it reminds me quite a bit, actually, of 9/11 in a lot of ways. I mean, one of the things that I don't think foreigners really appreciated about 9/11, the way it hit so many Americans, was not just that 3,000 people were killed. That was horrible enough. But this was a landmark in the American city. I mean, the world. The people said that the New York skyline looked like a mouth with a missing tooth for forever. And it took how long to put the Freedom Tower up? Was it 15 years? So finally, before they opened it. Yeah, something like that.
The thing is, it's not like the Twin Towers were all that attractive. They were, reinforced concrete, kind of straight lines up and down, impressive, but you wouldn't call them beautiful until they were gone. And then you realize...
Until they're gone. And then it's like, you bastards, It's like, this is irreparable damage. Now, fortunately, the cathedral looks like it's going to be mostly salvageable. The 3 rose windows survived. I don't know how. But there's a little cleaning up to do, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
My grandfather used to... I'm sorry. My grandfather used to remark about the Delaware Canal, which is this little canal that runs alongside the Delaware River between Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
Is this by the Delaware Water Gap?
Yeah, well, the Delaware Water Gap is up at the top of the Delaware River, essentially. It's the
because I always remember visiting that, and I could never understand. When I was a kid, I could never understand what the hell it meant. I just thought it sounded cool.
Yeah, Delaware it's kind of this gap between the ridges and where the Delaware River, I think. And I don't know it in detail. I've never been there, even though I grew up about an hour and a half from there. But in any case, I have been to the Delaware Canal many times. We skated on it. We fished in it. We caught a copperhead one day. But anyway, the point being, it took 18 months with a bunch of Irishmen with shovels and wheelbarrows being paid largely in fermented beverages to dig the entire Delaware Canal and to build I forget how many locks there are on the canal. But they had a project some years ago where they had to replace some of the locks because they were, after 100 years or so, they were starting to show some signs of age. And I forget how long it took. It was years. It was years to just fix a few of the locks on the canal that a bunch of Irish immigrant labor had built in 18 months entire,
And Hoover Dam was built in 2.5, 3 years, something like that.
Oh,
and
we couldn't do a study to build Hoover Dam in less than that.
No. Having looked into the spillway, if the dam overflows, it's the size of the Lincoln Tunnel. And it just goes pretty much straight down. And it's just awe-inspiring. Wow. And the statues are so... There's a couple of monuments like winged angels in an Art Deco style it's like 137 people were killed in building it or something. And I thought just the confidence of that, I mean, and then they pointed out on the tour that we saw that the visitor center that they put in 96 or something like that cost quite a bit more than the dam did. Oh. Quite a bit more.
Of course.
Jonah Goldberg got in a great line when they were 16, 17 years ago, I guess, when they were saying, well, what are we going to replace the Twin Towers with? Jonah Goldberg said we should build them exactly the same, exactly as they were, except 1 story taller to house the anti-aircraft missiles.
I think I remember being very fond of the idea of building them exactly the way they were.
Well, the tape on our reel-to-reel video recorder is about to go into slapping mode, so we better cut this short. That's right. We appreciate the members at BillWhittle.com who've made this possible, and we're grateful for all that you're doing to make BillWhittle.com a better and better site. It's fascinating. And by the way, if you email me and say you have a great idea for something we should talk about, I'm probably going to email you back and say, why don't you write a blog post about it on the member blog? Which is what I've been doing and what you've been doing. So we're grateful for that.
Don't sass me.
What's that?
Don't sass me.
No sass. That's right.
No, I'm talking about you, Scotty. Don't sass him.
I will try not to be so sassy. But I have to get back. We have to shoot these shows because I'm actually writing a vitriolic response to one of our members for a post that he made earlier today.
No, you
we don't want to hold that up.
It will be vitriolic, except for the vitriol part, which I've left out. So, ladies and gentlemen, for Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.